Hey, and welcome to The Office Field Guide. My name's Chris, and I'm reviewing every episode of The Office ever, and today we're looking at Diversity Day.
Today is Diversity Day, and someone's gonna come in and talk to us about diversity. It's something that I've been pushing, that I've been wanting to push for a long time.
Diversity Day was written by BJ Novak and directed by Ken Kwapis. It originally aired on March 29th, 2005, was viewed by 6 million people, way down from the pilot's staggering 11.2 million, and currently has an 8.3 out of 10 on IMDb. And your Diversity Day trivia is, and this is probably a layup, who did Michael sign his form as?
He's gonna lose it when he reads that.
Answer the trivia first, spat out the Easter egg, and or leave the best emoji sequence summing up next week's episode, and you'll get your name in that field guide. Today we're gonna talk about some behind the scenes stuff. We're gonna look at the not so hard to identify deeper meaning, and talk about why in the world this episode ends up on so many people's top 10 lists. And be warned, there may be spoilers for the series ahead, and with that, let's get offended.
I understand nothing.
Right, so the first thing we have to talk about is what this episode means. Okay, not like that. I mean, what this episode did for the series. When the pilot episode dropped, the 11.2 million people who tuned in saw an Americanized rendering of the British version of The Office, with the same plot points, same tone, and many of the same jokes, just tweaked for American audiences. The initial reaction to the pilot's approach was relatively poor, as the British version of The Office was much beloved. And look, I've seen it now a few times. I don't really hold it in the same regard as many people seem to. In my opinion, it was beloved because of what it accomplished, rather than it being the masterpiece of the small screen. To me, the UK Office is much like the Diversity Day episode itself. It was groundbreaking. Gervais and Merchant were able to create this low-budget comedy series that was a spoof of several shows that already existed on BBC at the time. And if you don't know, which I didn't, apparently a trend in BBC shows at that time were these workplace docudramas in which a camera crew would follow people at a workplace, maybe 3 different businesses, for one episode, and an editor would just smash that all together to make this dry, mundane story. So initial viewers of the UK version of The Office weren't really clued in on whether or not David Brent was a real person or not. That whole premise elevates that series to something really unique. With Gervais even talking in an interview that after the first episode aired, he was on a bus and overheard 2 elderly ladies talking about his show. One of them saying that they didn't get why they would show such a quirky, weird boss, and Gervais knew that he was on the right track with that reaction. But when the US did the exact same thing, that element, it wasn't present, so the show just didn't work. We didn't have that trend in shows per se, at least nothing that would air on NBC's primetime sitcom lineup, so audiences who are familiar with the British version of The Office, they were underwhelmed, because it was a cheap American ripoff, not really my words. And those who were unfamiliar with the British version, well, they were also underwhelmed because it just wasn't that good. Those are my words. So then comes Diversity Day. Filmed 6 months after the pilot was shot, the studio had picked up an additional 5 episodes to round out a 6-episode season. And Daniel said they wanted to steer away from just redoing plot points to separate themselves from the UK Office, which I think was a great call. They decided to focus on race for Diversity Day, as it is never not relevant in American culture. And race is something that the UK Office never really got into, at least not immediately.
So the Queen goes, is it a black... Hiya. Sorry, were you telling a joke? No, that was it.
What did the Queen say?
So what I'd like to do is talk about some of the actors who made their first appearance in this episode. Larry Wilmore plays Mr. Brown.
Michael, I would love to have your permission to run this session. Can I have your permission?
Wilmore was a writer on the show and had zero intentions of actually playing a character, but he sat on the table read for Brown, and he got so many laughs from everyone that they had to include him. He does also appear again in Gay Witch Hunt, which does seem pretty fitting.
Okay, can we steer away from gay people?
Also acting first in this episode is our beloved HR rep, Toby Flenderson.
Hey, we're not all gonna sit in a circle Indian style, are we?
Get out.
Portrayed by seasoned writer Paul Lieberstein. Lieberstein also had no intention of acting, but as BJ Novak revealed in an interview, all the writers' room loved Paul's demeanor and desperately wanted him in the series. Michael Schur even mentioned that when Kevin Riley saw the dailies of this,
And lame, so double offensive. This is an environment of welcoming, and you should just get the hell out of here.
he practically demanded that we see more of that redhead guy in the show. And out of that one interaction became this ongoing epic battle of good and evil between Michael and Toby. This is also the first appearance of Kelly in the series too.
I have two,
Nice.
white and Indian.
who's also portrayed by one of the writers. A character who goes through some drastic changes over the next few seasons, but we're gonna get into that in a future episode. And the last new actor I want to talk about is Meredith. And okay, I said actor because the character of Meredith was previously portrayed by this woman in the pilot, but in those 6 months between the pilot and Diversity Day, Allison Jones, the primary casting director, brought Kate Flannery in for the role of Meredith Palmer.
Lots of cultures eat rice. It doesn't help me.
And as far as structure goes, this episode ironed out the storytelling of The Office, with an interconnected A plot and B plot spliced in a semi-linear fashion. And that might not be worth noting, but the pilot is such a mess, I thought it'd be worth calling that out. Also at first, we see Dwight's weird grip on reality.
A hero kills people that wish him harm.
Okay.
A hero is part human and part supernatural. A hero is born out of a childhood trauma.
I love the ability of the writers to wave the line of what Dwight will really believe.
I don't believe you. Continue.
Also at first, Michael's love for cinematography.
But don't take my word for it. Let's take a look at the tape. But I'm also the founder of Diversity Tomorrow, because today is almost over.
Also seen first in Diversity Day, Michael going above and beyond to teach people a lesson.
Okay, Kevin, you can take off that thing, okay?
Obviously, he sees himself as some diversity warrior, giving himself the Martin Luther King Jr. card.
And I have a dream that you will really let the sparks fly.
And he'll still be a social justice warrior with a Martin later in the series too.
That Martin here has had some trouble with the law. You show me a white man you trust, and I will show you a black man that I trust even more.
Another major thing from this episode is that this sequence,
I brought in some burritos or some colored greens or some pad thai. Love pad thai.
It's collard green.
well, it was shot several different times in several different ways. Novak said that after each shot, they'd have this several-minute conversation discussing what each reaction from Krasinski meant and what they wanted it to mean. I love the attention to detail, and the cut that they went with was definitely iconic. Bringing the Jim Pam will they won't they to the forefront was a great move by Daniels, and something that was even recommended by Gervais. And that's all good, but for now, let's dive into the deeper meaning.
What does a bean mean?
Someone please explain it to Kevin.
Okay, having a pretty on-the-nose look at race for your second episode was a bold move by the showrunners.
This office, I think, is very advanced in terms of racial awareness.
And the humor in this episode can have a wide range of reactions from viewers. I thought the best way to break down this episode's deeper meaning is to look at those different reactions. So first, and I'll say probably in the minority, are those who would champion this episode as an excuse to make racist jokes and make fun of stereotypes or spout out racial slurs. Well, I have one clip to combat that.
Abraham Lincoln once said that if you're a racist, I will attack you with the North.
And it's not often that I'd say this, but if you believe that this episode is giving you ammo to make racist comments, you're just wrong. And, well, that's my opinion. It just doesn't matter. Opinions don't matter when the opinion is based on something that's empirically false. And this episode is impossible to watch as it exists and conclude that racism is okay.
Come on! Let's celebrate diversity, right?
Yes, exactly.
Anything beyond that, and you're just projecting.
That was great! She gets it! Now she knows what it's like to be a minority!
The next reaction that I'd say, and it's kind of close to the last one, are people who use this as ammo against modern day political correctness culture. And there probably is some overlap between this reaction and the racist crowd, but it's probably not the same. I say that because this episode does seem to be poking a little bit of fun at super heightened PC aware folks. For example, corporate brings in Mr. Brown to do the most boring presentation that I could imagine.
All you need are honesty, empathy, respect, and open-mindedness.
And this is just so real. I don't know if you've ever sat through one of these things before, but I have.
I do believe in that part of the pledge.
But why is Mr. Brown there in the first place?
Looking through the cards, I've noticed that many of you wrote down the same incident, which is ironic because it's the exact incident I was brought in here to respond to. Now, how many of you are familiar with the Chris Rock routine?
Well, obviously that. But is he there just to spread the joys of diversity?
It kind of expresses the joint experience we had today. I want you to look them over and sign them as kind of a group pledge.
Well, probably somewhat, but it's really just to get Michael to sign this piece of paper.
I don't think I can sign this.
I can't leave until you do.
And why?
What are you writing, Purple?
Just preparing for the deposition.
Right, because in the US, it is illegal for a company to discriminate based on race, religion, sex, age, gender, disability, sexual orientation, and maybe you missed something and I'm sorry if I did. But Dunder Mifflin doesn't deal with this issue, then eventually they're gonna have a lawsuit on their hands. Right, so it's possible that there's criticism here that some companies may not even care about diversity as much as they care about not getting sued. But overall, I don't think we're supposed to take away PC culture is stupid. That doesn't seem to be the message.
What am I supposed to be?
It's gonna percolate. No. Well, that was inadvertent. We didn't actually plan that.
The third reaction that I think people have to this episode is this is a cautionary tale against overreactions. Michael's reeling during this entire plot due to his Chris Rock routine. Michael is so convinced that he can right those wrongs that he takes matters into his own hands.
I just hated it when that guy was in here. Mr. Brown, if that was his real name.
And obviously this works for no one.
Get as much done as you can before lunch, because afterward, I'm going to have you all in tears.
And in the background, we get the idea of this overreaction theme being reinforced with the B plot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's actually another salesman here. Yeah, I can redo it if you want to do that. Oh, we gave you a discount? No, I don't blame you.
Call me dumb, but as many times as I've watched this episode, I'm not really sure I ever connected that Dwight stole a sale from Jim as retribution for his shredder nonsense.
Thanks, Dwight.
Retaliation. Tit for tit.
Shredder nonsense. Where's my Ninja Turtles t-shirt? Whatever, I couldn't find it. Anyway, the point here is, in an attempt to right his wrongs, or at very least compensate for a misinterpretation, Michael ends up alienating people he only wants to make feel secure.
I have a customer meeting.
Yeah, well, if you leave, we'll only have 2 left. Yes. Enjoy! Absolutely. Namaste.
And security is what we're expecting in our social circles, whether at work or in our pods. It's a new word for me. It's why I'm convinced that Pam rests her head on Jim. In this circle of chaos around all of them, Pam finds some security in her friend Jim, and Jim finds some solace in knowing that he can provide that for her.
Not a bad day.
And in speaking of overreacting, there's probably something to say here about overreaction of wanting to censor this episode for its offensive content, but it seems to be quieted down now as far as I can tell from when I'm filming this, so who knows. It's interesting though, I read in an interview that Daniels was so worried about the uncensored Chris Rock bit getting out ahead of the show without any context that he literally ran to the editing room and bleeped it out on the master.
He's butchering it. Could you just let me, every time?
Meaning that there are no copies of the uncensored version out there. And look, this is all opinion stuff. My opinion is that we should use logic as our guide here. And when reading this episode, you might question, what is the joke? Is it that racism is funny?
Let me ask you, is there a term besides Mexican that you prefer? Something less offensive?
Or is it using that humor to comment on the stupidity of racism?
You want to get high?
No.
I think you do, Mon.
Stop.
Okay, all right, no. All right, it's good.
This episode invokes the name of 2 comedians during its 22-minute runtime.
Now, how many of you are familiar with the Chris Rock routine?
What are you watching?
Chappelle Show.
Really?
Yeah.
Both Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle made names for themselves in the 90s and early 2000s as prolific comedians whose routines and sketches would often center around race issues, which wasn't new at the time, and it's still a thing now. And in my opinion, one of the most thought-provoking questions this episode asks is, what makes something racist?
And then I go and do the exact same routine, same comedic timing, and people file a complaint to corporate. Is it because I'm white and Chris is black?
Well, that question's kind of a joke, but it's not resolved. It just lingers out there, leading to what I assumed was a commercial break, leaving the viewers to ponder Michael's question and think for ourselves, what makes something inherently discriminatory or racist? That's the real question of the day. But there are better people than me to answer that question.
Where's my Oprah moment?
I'm just reviewing episodes of The Office. So the question I want to dissect is this episode actually good?
This is the worst.
Frequently making top 10 lists of the best episodes of The Office, Diversity Day seems to be heralded as one of the greatest. Beyond that, it was nominated for the Writers Guild of America Award for Best Episodic Comedy. And just real talk time, one of the reasons I wanted to redo my season 1 content is that I had this thought in the back of my head, and it just kept saying to me, maybe you just don't get it.
Man, I should have gotten some food.
So I've spent the last year reviewing episodes of The Office, and I came back mostly for this one episode. Because I want to be cool, I want to be in the crowd, I want to be one of those people that would put this on my top 10 list. But I'm just not sure this episode is as good as it could be. Let me break it down for you. They start with a hot button topic. In this case, it's casual racism. Michael's a culprit of offending someone. Michael tries to make it right with corporate, but still insists his way is better. Then he crosses the line in an attempt to show how woke he is. Okay, so call me basic, but I think that Gay Witch Hunt literally did that exact same premise so much better.
I call everybody faggy. Why would anyone find that offensive?
He's attracted to other men.
Okay. And you can tell me how you do that to another dude.
Your immaturity is extremely disappointing and may even lead to a lawsuit, which is the absolute last thing this company needs right now.
Oscar, why don't you take this opportunity to officially come out to everybody here, however you want to do it.
It's a fine line to try to present a relatable Michael Scott, who is both the source of the cringe, yet somehow still lovable. And I get that's not what they were going for right now, but juxtaposing future Michael against the abomination that we see in Diversity Day is like swapping out your bowl of delicious cereal with dry rocks. Look, Diversity Day, along with the rest of season 1, has 2 sets of pretty large shoes to fill. First, it has to measure up against the much beloved original version of The Office. But the other set of shoes that we measure Diversity Day against is what The Office became. On the night it aired, only 6 million people watched this episode. It wasn't until season 2, with a renewed vigor from NBC and an overhaul of the show and the very character of Michael Scott, that the ratings went up, meaning that a lot of people, me included, had never seen Diversity Day until it streamed years later or they got the DVDs. Thus, a bias was created by watching future episodes of The Office before watching this one. And so look, going back, revisiting this, I'm gonna say it's honestly good for what it was. This episode has so much going for it.
Oh man, am I a woman?
But that doesn't mean that what came later didn't change our perspectives. It's kind of like having a favorite dish your mom made when you were growing up. For me, it was chili.
Probably the thing I do best.
I wouldn't touch a bowl of chili at any of my friends' house ever. And that was until I got married and my wife decided to make her chili for me for the first time. I was like, babe, you got some big shoes to fill. My mama's chili is the best chili. Don't tell this to my mom, but my wife's chili was so much better. It was amazing.
Trick is to undercook the onions.
Look, acknowledging my wife's chili is better than my mom's doesn't undervalue my mom's chili, and I can appreciate it for what it was. But my perception of what is good was clearly impacted by what I experienced later. And I think the same goes for The Office. And I don't think I'm really alone here. As I alluded earlier, the IMDb scores are generally a good way to understand the general fandom's sentiments on this episode. Bad episodes of The Office are somewhere in the 7 to 8 range. A good episode is anywhere from 8 to 8.5, and a great episode go up from there. And Diversity Day sits right here. And then I wondered if that was because this episode is problematic, but it actually is well below other problematic episodes like Gay Witch Hunt, Women's Appreciation, and other generally offensive episodes. So I think the best conclusion as to why this ends up on so many people's top 10 list is for what I said earlier. To me, the UK Office is much like the Diversity Day episode itself. It was groundbreaking. Diversity Day was groundbreaking, as it essentially created the template for what this series was going to be for the rest of its runtime. While the variables change, the recipe stays the same. As such, I think it deserves to be on the list of the most iconic episodes of The Office. While it's not the best, it is a bold look at social issues in a pretty comedic way. But what do I rate this episode? That's the real question. Having gone through that entire thing, I'm gonna rate Diversity Day a 4 out of 5. As soon as the second half of this episode hits, around this moment,
All right, everybody pretty? Come on, here we go.
it becomes iconic, shockingly memorable, and we get an early feel for what a killing field in The Office would be like. It sets the pace for the rest of the show, and it explores a taboo topic, and it really sells me on this Jim Pam thing. I wouldn't put this in my list of top 10 episodes of The Office. I just wouldn't. But it's good in its own right. But that's just what I think about Diversity Day. What are your thoughts? I want to hear from you in the comments. Check out the Discord and stay tuned after this for the mini reviews. If you want to be a part of the mini reviews for future episodes, head on over to the Patreon page. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.